Well, if you have a copy of God's Word, would you turn to Deuteronomy chapter 6? Deuteronomy chapter 6. We're not going to get all the way through this message today, and I'm good with that. We're going to just kind of fly over the whole thing, and we're going to come back and grab the rest of it next week because it's got some incredibly important truths, and it's really, really timely in this playground coming together and what all has transpired with what we're doing here at First Baptist, and we're so glad you're here. If you are a guest, let me just say we're delighted you're here this morning. It means a lot to us. A little bit unique day of us going out in the parking lot, that's for sure, but thank you for being flexible in what you do. Just want to very quickly review the vision frame again. It might be your first Sunday here. It might be your sixth time to see this. Either way, we want you to see it because it's incredibly important. It's the DNA of our church. It's the foundation. It's the building blocks. It's the DNA of who Petal First Baptist is. And it's really 4 M words, right? We talk about the first of that vision frame is our mission, right? Which is engaging people with the hope of the gospel to see lives transformed. That is our mission. Why are we here? Why do we build a playground, right? People ask the question, why build a playground? We want to use it as a tool, as a resource to engage people with the hope of the gospel to see lives transformed. That is our mission. Everything we do has to be around that central idea. If it's not, then it gives us permission to say no to it. And if it is, it gives us a permission to say yes to it. It is our map. The next section over of that is our motives, right? We find those 6 motives. We looked at 5 of them now. We're going to look at the 6th one today. Relationship over isolation, life transformation over more information, biblical truth over my opinion, going over staying, investing over consuming. And then this morning we're going to begin to talk about strong families over busy calendars. I'll talk more about that in a moment. We added that one really almost at the last minute. We felt so compelled about this one, and I'm going to talk to you about why that is. So we talk about our map, we talk about our motives, our values. What do we value the most? The bottom part of that vision frame is our map, right? I said our motives and our mission, sorry. Our map is at the bottom, and it is our connect, grow, commit, go. What does a transformed life look like? What does that transformation journey look like? It is to see people connected, people growing, people being committed, and then people going to the ends of the earth and to our own backyard. We see that picture. How do I know if I'm growing or not? There's the picture right there. How do you know if you're becoming a disciple, a follower of Christ? There is the picture, right? And the top of that, the measures, right? How do we know as a church we're being successful in reaching our mission? How do we know that? Well, really very simply, it's found in 6 words, A through F, right? We want to help it begin to be memorable to you. How am I living? Not just am I living, because we can answer this yes, but we want to take it further than that. How am I living these ways? Authentically, biblically, connectedly, desperately, evangelistically, and faithfully, right? Those 6 key thoughts of how we know. So we're having conversations with one another. We can ask those questions. Hey, tell me how you're living connectedly. How are you living evangelistically? How are you living authentically in your life? When we can answer those questions and we know that we're growing and we're seeing the growth, doesn't mean we're perfect or we're reaching perfection, but it means we're asking these difficult and challenging questions of one another. Am I really, really going deep in my walk with the Lord, or am I content to stay at this shallow level of just kind of showing up and just attending church? Or am I growing? Am I being, here's the goal, transformation. Am I being transformed? So transformation means, do I look more like Christ today than I did yesterday, than I did last week and last year, right? It's this picture of transformation that's so vitally important. We talk about this 6th one. There was a lot of the sentences to go with each of these, but this morning we'll talk about strong families over busy calendars. I'm going to come back to the scripture in just a moment, but here's what it says. We will equip parents to lead their families to prioritize Christ rather than conforming to the expectations of our culture. Let me read this statement again. We will equip parents, we will help parents, encourage parents, right? Families, to lead their families, to prioritize Christ rather than conforming to the expectations of our culture. We live in a culture ever growing, ever increasing to demand more and more of your time as adults and more of your time as children and teenagers, right? The expectations, the level of what is expected to be a part of something gets higher and higher. The time commitment grows more and more. And I hear it all the times from families. I see it in their faces. I see it in the exhaustion on their faces. Their tongues hanging out. They're tired. They're weary. Why? Because so many of us, and I include myself, I'm not preaching to you, I'm preaching to me. We allow our calendars to get crammed with a lot of stuff that some of it we could let go of, right? We allow the time factor of our culture to dictate how we deal with our children. It's amazing to me, and I pick on them a little bit, Matthew and William, but Emma was a terrible car rider, so we were grateful to God for the DVD player, right? The DVD player. So we put it in. It's a pacifier for a 2-year-old, right? So that I can drive and not want to throw her out of the car, right? When I'm driving somewhere. And so, especially long trips, right? So we've been talking about, when we had it up since December, we forgot to take it down. It's just one of those things that's too busy to think about it. So we took it down, and here are my children's responses. What are we going to do? Panic. Horror, shock. I mean, the world is going to come to an end, folks. And here's what we said. We're going to talk. It's something you do when you move your mouth and you look at somebody's eyeballs and you communicate. Well, what's Emma going to do? She's going to talk too. Instead of this. Right? What do? Immediately we get somewhere. We jump in a car, we get on. So the busy calendars, I want you to don't just hone it down to a calendar and a time thing. We want to grab the whole spectrum, right? Somebody asked in Vision Team when we came up with this motive. This is what they said. You might make some people mad when you preach this one. Do we really want to include this one? Are you willing to communicate it in a way that is truthful, that is authentic, that is real, that is not designed to slam anybody, it's not designed to hurt anybody, but it's designed to preach the truth and the reality that the culture is pressing in on you. It's pressing in on me, on my family, on my kids, on your grandkids. Right? It's pressing in. And here's what the word means. Romans 12, 1 and 2 talk about being transformed by the renewing of your mind. It says, don't be conformed any longer to the pattern of this world. The word conform means to squeeze into its mold. Right? It will squeeze us into its mold if we allow it to. And it's not easy to not be squeezed because it seems that everybody else is doing it. Everybody else is being squeezed in the mold and we're left out. And here's the other thing, is if we choose to not step inside that mold, somebody else gets offended, right? Because we're not doing what they're doing. And then they say this, well, you're judging me. No, I'm really not. If we don't participate, then they view us as judgmental. But that's not what the case is at all. And so then we feel a different kind of pressure to conform because we don't want to offend anybody. We don't want to make anybody upset, right? The world we live in needs more than ever strong families. Dads, let me give you a word of encouragement. It's not Father's Day, it's just April, so that's good. I don't usually preach a Mother's Day or Father's Day sermon. Do you know what this really hinges upon, dads? Dads and granddads, listen to me carefully. You know what the family hinges on? You. It hinges on you. It hinges on me. Right, ladies, you get to kind of just chill out for a minute, all right? Men, let's listen carefully. We talk about this idea of, leading your home is hard, isn't it, men? If we really allow the pressure and the weight of leading your family spiritually speaking, and really in every other way, is very weighty if we allow it to. Ladies, sometimes you feel that same weight and pressure, and sometimes you either are forced to or you step in to where your husband should be taking the lead role. Now, does that mean we don't do it together? Absolutely. I was having a conversation going down the hallway. Man, they were bragging about their kids, and they said, well, my wife. I said, I know I'm the same way. Without my wife, they'd be a disaster, right? But men, you play a vital role, a crucial role, a critical role. For children to understand God as a father, they have to see it in their earthly father. When you stop and think about that, wow, if we let it sink in, it's huge. So our desire is to help equip families, to encourage you, to help transform your families, to give you resources, to spend time and energy and effort to help you be the spiritual leaders in your homes. Right? We're going to talk about some of these thoughts more. Let's talk about Deuteronomy chapter 6. Right? God gives some incredible words thousands and thousands of years ago to the nation of Israel. right? And they're just as appropriate today as they were then. In fact, maybe in some ways, it's even more appropriate because we've forgotten sometimes the power of the gospel, the requirements of the gospel, the call of the gospel, the call to commit, the call to sacrifice, right? The call to live this abundant life in Jesus, right? We're not calling our kids to live this sourpuss, terrible, I swallowed a dill pickle life, right? We want to live a joyful life, a life that's full of purpose and meaning, a life that is just not lived for today, but is a life that is lived looking towards tomorrow and down the line. And so here Moses is having some great words of instruction with the people of Israel. Some words that you've heard before, but I want you to hear them again, and we're going to come back and dive through those, right? There go all of your phones right there. Good? There they go. It's like a church text. Here it goes. All right, good. It's a flash flood warning. Is that what it is? Or there you go. See, I'm good. I don't even have my phone. I know right what it is. Good. All right. It's about to rain, in case you're wondering. So here's the good news. Here's the great news. Y'all ain't going to want to go anywhere because it's going to be a deluge. This couldn't be any better. I'll just preach it all in one Sunday. That'll be fantastic. Look, I've got M&Ms for everybody. It'll be a nice snack to tide you over, okay? It'll be great. It'll be great. All right. Don't you love having fun in church? I love to laugh in church. Some people go to church. Those people are so stuck up. Not this church, I guarantee you. Not this preacher. All right. Let's go to the scripture. Let's look at chapter 6, verse 1. Here's what it says. Now this is the commandment, the statutes and the judgments which the Lord your God has commanded me to teach you, that you might do them in the land where you're going over to possess it. So that, why? Key word, so that, why? You and your sons and your grandsons. So listen to me, granddads and grandparents. Listen to me. Don't think you don't have a vital role to play in the spiritual development of your children. Right? I tell my mom this all the time. She struggles sometimes because she wants to do this and do this. I tell her the most important thing you could ever pour into my children is spiritual value. I've told her over and over again, I don't have a clue what my grandparents gave me as a gift. I couldn't tell you not one gift they gave me. But I could tell you story after story after story of conversations on a back porch, on a tractor, in the back of a pickup truck with no seatbelt, driving down the interstate at 65 miles an hour, right? And I survived, right? You did too. I have stories because they poured into my life. So grandparents, don't check out on me here. You have a huge role to play. So that you and your sons and your grandsons might fear the Lord your God, to keep his statutes and his commandments which I command you all the days of your life, and that your days may be prolonged. O Israel, there's a plea from Moses. You should listen and be careful to do it, that it may be well with you, and that you may multiply greatly, just as the Lord, the God of your fathers, has promised you, in a land flowing with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God. The Lord is one. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. And these words which I am commanding you today shall be on your heart, and you shall teach them. Circle this word in your Bible. Watch this. Diligently. You. If you want to circle the word you, write your name, moms and dads, by that word you. Please note, and I'm going to talk about how these two go together. But please note, the you is not the church. The you is mom and dad. Right? You should diligently, carefully, intentionally, with great effort and energy. What? It flipped over, sorry. To your sons, and shall talk to them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way. So for us, we don't walk hardly anywhere. So when you're driving in the car, when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall bind them as a sign in your hand, and they shall be as frontals on your forehead, and you shall write them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates. I'm going to read the rest of the chapter next week because there's more there, but I just want to stop there and give you a flyover of where we're going. And then I'll come back and we're going to dig deep into this. So I pray you'll come back next week and we'll talk about that. It's another perfect Sunday to do it, I guess. It's Graduate Sunday. We're talking about this. It's a very important thing. How do we demonstrate this motive? Let me read these to you, and then we're going to come and kind of unpack just a couple things quickly. we want to demonstrate this motive by this way. They're on your outline there. A commitment to help strengthen and serve families, to help build and maintain strong biblical marriages, equipping parents with the tools necessary to raise their children in an increasingly secular culture to know and follow Christ. Well, I love that phrase. Excellent and engaging age group ministries from birth through college using the Orange strategy, which I'm going to share with you what that is, to help families and the church partner together to deeply impact the next generation. The last one, something we do around here, intentionally, it is not accidentally, not overcrowding our church calendar, but making it family friendly. And I'm going to talk more about that too. These are our demonstrating points. How do we see this fleshed out, right? Several ways. Number one, we are called as a church body to equip, to encourage, and partner with families. Let me explain what I mean to you about this. I want you to think of this in an average year for most kids that walk through the doors of our church. How many Sundays would you think, and we're going to add Wednesdays because we offer Wednesday nights. We have some that do Wednesday nights that don't do Sundays, and some do Sundays that don't do Wednesdays, kind of in between. There are 52 Sundays in a year. Most stats show us that the average child that walks through our doors, a teenager, is here about 40 Sundays a year out of 52 on average. Some more and some a lot less. Remember I told you that the most recent survey said and asked this question, what do you consider to be an active member of your church? And people answered, if I go once a month, I'm active in the life of that church. So in other words, people answered, if I spend 12 hours a year, I consider myself committed and connected to that church body. 12 hours a year. There are thousands of hours in a year, and just 12, right? We're going to bump it up to say the average family comes 40 times, and I added more than this. I added about 25 or so for some Wednesday nights, right? And we don't do Wednesday nights all year. We do it in, we leave out June and July, but we come back and do August basically through May. So I added about 65 M&Ms. Peanut butter M&Ms that I really like. So, I know that's just so wrong, isn't it? But I can eat them because they're up here. When I was counting them out, there may not be 65 because I had a hard time not pouring them in the bowl. Y'all ever had that problem? So, youth worker, kids worker, preschool worker. This is how many times in a year's time you're going to have to influence that child. About 60 hours, if you're lucky. 60 hours. But moms and dads, on a yearly basis, you have over 3,000 hours to impact the life of your child. Let me let that sink in a minute. Just look at that. Now, some of you are thinking to yourself, well, what does that mean? Does that mean that church is not that important and we ought to pay our staff a whole lot less? And no, that's not what that means. Sometimes we church folk, staff people, we get real focused on this 60 hours. And we should. That's what our calling is. But sometimes we get so focused on this, right, that we miss this. Let me explain what I mean by this. This strategy, called an orange strategy is what it's called. I want you to consider this to be the color yellow, okay? Yellow, what we as a church invest in your children, your teenagers, on a weekly basis and a yearly basis. This being you and your red, families, moms and dads, kiddos, this is you as a family, right? The red. When you combine red and yellow, it makes what color? Orange. Too often, if we're not careful, these become two separate silos. We have our church time and our church stuff, and we have our family stuff. I'm going to make this really simple, and I'm going to come back and explain this deeper because this has a lot of ramifications. And we already have a lot of resources I'm going to try to explain to you next week that can help you understand how this works. We want to see these two combined together as one. We want to work together with moms and dads, with grandparents, with single moms, with single dads, with grandparents raising kids. We want to partner together and become one influence on that child's life. We want to help equip you that. We want to give you the resources that. We want to show you things you could already be doing right now with your children. One of the most simple things you can do with your kids when they come at 9 o'clock, which is not babysitting time, is not just to try to get you here at 9 o'clock, but we want you here in a life group. We're teaching your kids valuable doctrine, character, molding, and shaping with great intentionality in Wonderland and there. So when I come home and I sit down at the lunch table with my daughter and my boys, the first question out of my mouth is, what'd you learn today? What'd you talk about today? They're supposed to come home with a God time every single week. Short, simple, and sweet, right? No 45-minute deal. We're talking like 5 to 6 minutes. You could easily, sometimes it's 2. That what does it do? Reinforces what we've done here at church and gives you all kinds of activities, gives you questions. There's an app even you can use. Of course, there's a great surprise. There's an app for everything, right? There's an app you can use that has videos on it, has all kinds of things. But this God time reinforces. So I ask Emma, she's 3. She comes home and I say, what'd you learn? Jesus died. And they put him in a rock. But hallelujah, he's alive. At 3. And does she understand the doctrine of salvation and the blood of the cross of Christ? Does she understand justification and sanctification? No. She would look like I was saying a curse word if I said those words. She didn't know what that means. But what are we doing, moms and dads? Listen to me. You're laying a foundation. So that when your kid hears the word salvation at 8 and they're sitting at Kid Extreme in about a month from now and there's 300 kids sitting in this room and we're sharing the gospel, they already know who Jesus is, that Jesus loved them and died for them. And they hear it not just at church, but at home. Now some of you are going, oh great, here comes the guilt trip being a parent. Good Lord, that's the last thing I need. Look, me too. So it's no guilt trip. This is designed to encourage you and help you, and a strategy from our church that we're going to launch on deeper than ever before in the history of our church to do this with great intentionality. To help parents understand their kids need them to help them advance in their relationship with God. The church can only do so much. One of the greatest struggles, Chris will tell you as a youth minister, as a kids minister, is to pour in knowing you're sending kids back into World War III. And all that I've poured in is going to be sucked out of them the minute they walk back in that house. It is one of the most grievous, one of the most challenging. I can remember going home as a student pastor on Wednesday nights, crying my eyes out, knowing that that kid was about to go back into absolute hell on earth. And some, even just as worse, I guess, going into homes that were Christian homes, but mom and dad never said a word about Jesus. They knew all about the things in their kids' life, but they didn't know about a thing about their spiritual life. Let me ask you a question, mom and dad. Do you know where your kids are spiritually? Do you know where they are spiritually? Do you have spiritual conversations? And here's the great question we say all the time. Well, I don't have time. We're going to talk about some 4 strategic ways that you can make time if you'll be intentional about doing those. And I'm going to talk about this next Sunday. Got to help equip parents know how to be spiritual leaders in their home. Listen to this statement. Listen to this stat. 85% of parents, this is a recent survey from George Bonner about 5 or 6 years ago. 85% of parents believe they have the primary responsibility for teaching their children about religious beliefs. 85%. 96% of those parents believe they have the primary responsibility of teaching their kids about values. Check this out, though. We all know that the majority of adults do not attend church, right? We've heard that stat a lot. It's growing, it's increasing. But listen to this stat. The exception to that statistic is this, that parents who have children under the age of 18, nearly 2/3 of those parents attend church at least once a month. And 43% of those attend church at least weekly. We have a prime opportunity to teach and to encourage and to equip parents and grandparents and families to be strong rather than busy. Busy in our culture is equated with strong. If we have a lot of activities, then I'm being a good family. My kid's not sitting home bored. We're going, doing, right? And we did it. We did it this last year. We got a lot crammed into one time frame. We're like, this ain't happening again. No way. The third one. We must do more to help our families, not just kids, right? This is the orange and yellow. We're called, secondly, to leave a legacy. Now, I'm going to give you these blanks. Don't panic for all of you blank writer-inners, okay? I'll have them for you next time. We're going to come back to it again. I want you to think about these. Consider the end. Here's the one phrase about consider the end. And this is a challenge as a parent. I have a 12-year-old and 10-year-old. And we're in that phase that I looked so forward to as a youth minister 10 or 15 years ago of sending off my child to infuge. I dread it. I've threatened Chris with his job. Thank you, John. I'm glad somebody else caught that. It's funny. My kid's going to youth camp. Chris is the youth minister. He better bring him back in one piece. And now get all these parents looked at me with these eyes of like, please take care of my kid. In the teenage years. It gets harder and harder, doesn't it, moms and dads, to have a strong family and not conform to the culture, doesn't it? Right? Let's be real. Don't be all pious and super spiritual. Oh, I don't have that problem. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. So do I. Here's what our culture tells us to think about. Miss this. Your kid needs to be happy. Don't let your kid be sad. Make sure they're happy. Do whatever it takes to make them happy. Okay, God's word never speaks about your child's happiness. You know what the Bible speaks about? Your child's purpose and design and calling to love and serve God. That he speaks to. Right? Now, does that involve church? Oh, yes, absolutely. It's a vital, critical role. Right? But it involves you. Right? And we're crushed into this mold so constantly. Here's what I want you to consider. Moms and dads, it's hard to consider when you have a 3-year-old or a baby. But what's going to be at the end when that child walks out of your door and goes to college or starts that job at 18 or 19? What are they going to have? What will you have put into them? You've got to consider the end, not just today. The second thing, contend for the heart. Contend for your child's heart. Thirdly, commit. I love this. Commit to be copyable. This is not a real word. I completely made up this word. But it's a good word. It ought to be in the dictionary. What do you mean by copyable? Your child ought to be able to look at you and know what it means to follow Jesus well. Not perfectly, right? Because that won't happen if you have children. You may not sin anywhere else, but if you have children, you will sin. Right, moms and dads? Let's be real. Right? I'm going to yell. I'm going to lose my temper. I'm probably going to be sarcastic. Copyable. Is your life copyable? Boy, so much here. Create a rhythm in your life and your family's life. We're going to talk about that. Clarify your calendar and choose to widen your circle. I got to end with this because our time is going to leave me. Ever so careful here. Now, how many of you students are 18 years old? Raise your hand. 18. Raise your hand high. 18. How many 18-year-olds? One? Is that it? Ben, you are not 18, son. Good try. I know. 18 right back here. Okay. 2. Anybody else? And to graduate, 3 weeks, right? How many of you have a baby in the nursery? Like they're 0 years old. Raise your hand. Raise it high. They're 0. They hadn't quite hit 1 year old yet. 1, 2, 3, couple. Okay. How many of you have a 1 to 3-year-old? Raise your hand. 1 to 3-year-old. Okay. Right here in this jar, that looks like a lot of marbles, doesn't it, y'all? All right. I've already told you on your outline how many's there. 936 marbles. When you look at that at the very beginning, that looks like a lot of marbles. Now, some of us look at these marbles and thinking, my children have helped me lose my marbles. That's what my problem's been. When your child is born until they turn 18 years old. So just assuming that they turn 18 close to the day they graduate, right? Just for purposes. Moms and dads, you have a grand whopping total of 936 weeks with your children. That's all you got. Some of us are going to go, all of a sudden we're going to begin to have breathing issues in a moment. We're going to begin to panic. I got a 12-year-old. He's halfway to 13. I have about 280 something weeks left to invest in the life of my child. And that's all I got. Now I'll get to invest them as a parent. My mom and dad invested in me after I left the house. Obviously, you know, parenting doesn't stop when they leave your home. I know. But as far as parenting them, you have 936 marbles. That's all you got. That's all I've got. All of a sudden, it seems a little short, doesn't it? Something you might want to do. You can find them online. Now, if you have 3 kids, you're going to have to figure out how to make this thing work because I'm not buying 900 and something marbles, right? Would you buy a jar, put it in your house? It's got marbles in it. Maybe you just do 52 and restock them every year or something, however you want to do it. But take a marble out. And my question is, what are you doing with these marbles, this precious time that God has given you? And what are you putting into these weeks? If you can think now back to the beginning of the school year, you'll take out 37 marbles. What have you done with those 37 marbles? What have I done with them? What significant has happened? Do my kids know Jesus better now? It's a lot of flash flood warnings, isn't it? It's my phone. Well, turn that thing off. Good Lord. I don't think you can turn it off. It's like one of those alert things. You can't turn it off. That's our government. There they go, intruding in our lives again. There they go. All right. But they want to keep us safe. That's good. They probably don't know where my phone is, Charlie, or know that where my phone is located, but they probably do. Anyway, so back to marbles. Right? When you see how much time you have left, you tend to do more with the time you have now. This is not a guilt trip to make you think, oh my gosh, I missed all these marbles. I missed all these moments. No, what it's designed to do is this, is you have the marbles you have left, use them well. Grandparents, you can do the same countdown with your grandkids. You got 936 weeks with your grandkids. What are you going to pour in them? What are you going to leave behind? What's going to be said about the legacy you have left to them? And when they say they miss somebody, when I say I miss my dad, here's what I think. I miss the spiritual conversations you could have had with my boys. I miss the things you could have poured into their lives. That's what I miss. Yeah, I wish you could come to their baseball games. And I wish you could come and see them play football and watch them sing and shoot a bow and arrow. Those would all be great. That's not what I miss the most. 936. What are you going to do with them? 3 words of encouragement, and then we're done. Don't miss your role, moms and dads. Let me say it very clearly. Your calling is not to guilt you. It is just to speak the truth. Your calling and mine, my primary responsibility of being a Christ follower, if I have kids or grandkids, my primary calling in life is to help them grow spiritually. I have that responsibility, and I will stand before a holy, righteous God and answer to how I raise my kids. I will not stand and answer to you. I will not stand and answer to my parents. I will not stand and answer to anyone but God and God alone to how I raise my kids to fear and to know and to serve and to love Jesus more than anything else. And I've only got 936 weeks to do that. Less with my 2 oldest. Don't miss this week. Don't miss this week. You got a marble. You got 1 week. Don't miss it. Don't take it for granted. Don't assume. Make the most of this week. And we'll talk more about how you do that, but let me just give you just a clear, and I'm going to talk more. When you're in the car, let me challenge you, families. Let me challenge you. Your kids are going to die, and they're going to go into convulsions. I know. Make them turn off the electronics and actually have to have a conversation with you. Turn off the TV player, right? morning times. Now, some of your kids are not morning people, so you don't need to have deep spiritual conversations. Both of mine are semi-morning, and you have to be almost morning since you have to get up before Jesus gets up to get your kids to the primary school and the elementary school, right? Right? The drive times, the morning times, the supper times, family meals, which seem to be a thing of the past, but can still happen if you make it a priority. And then this one I'm terrible at because my brain is shut down at 8 o'clock, 7:30. Missing the bedtimes. Getting in a room with your child on their bed could provide some of the greatest conversations ever. Don't miss this week. And lastly, don't miss Sunday and Wednesday. Some of you are going, well, I wonder if he's going to sneak that one in. I am. Can I give you a word of encouragement? 40 Sundays is not enough. I know you're going to miss some for vacations. I know you're going to miss some for sickness. You're going to miss some. But let me give you a word of encouragement. You ought to have your kids here every single time, because here's what I know to be true. I know adults are prepared for life groups every single Sunday. I know teachers are prepared to teach your kids every single Sunday and every single Wednesday. Teenagers, they're preparing, youth workers preparing every single week. Why? Because we understand the value of time is precious. We're not bringing them up here to babysit them or give them a piece of candy, right? All those things may happen. But primarily, we want to invest in them. Let's partner together, shall we? Let's do this thing together to build strong families over busy calendars. We'll talk more about it next week. I hope you're back next week. We'll go deeper in all this stuff. And I pray it encourages you and helps you. A marvel. So simple, yet so powerful. Let's pray together.